Give me a call, Boris.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, whatever time it is you are listening. This is Property Box News Podcast. I'm Simon Everson, and I am joined today by international investor and writer Nicholas Wallwork. Hello,
Good
Nicholas.
morning,
How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for joining in on my special intro. Yes, so your book, International Real Estate for Dummies, is out
Indeed.
very soon, and we're going to
Certainly
talk
is.
about that today.
Yep.
But first, for viewers and listeners, tell us who you are and what's your story.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I've been involved in property for many years now. I bought my first house out of university with 10 grand graduate loan and another 15 grand personal loan. Many people thought that might have been risky. I was confident in the asset class of property and bricks and mortar and the future of where that might go, and took the leap. I mean, it was my own home. Obviously, it wasn't an investment property at that time, but that's how I got started in property ultimately. 2 or 3 years later, I started renting out the rooms in that property in the early 2000s and moved on to another home and kept the last one. So ultimately, without sort of realising it, I started in HMOs, houses in multiple occupation. And it kind of went from there. So I just sort of started buying stuff gradually, alongside my day job. I was working in the city. I worked for Reuters and NASDAQ Stock Exchange, and then finally Lehman Brothers Investment Bank. So did all of that kind of as the day job, bit of property as a sideline, which a lot of people do, of course, and then decided
It was
to
a
take it full
fashionable
time.
thing to do in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it was quite easy to do as well in
of course.
the early 2000s, before
Great
the
lending.
credit crunch. It was, nice, buoyant, upward shifting market. Pretty much anyone could buy a property and throw a lick of paint on new carpets and turn it into something that adds value in a couple of years. Not so easy these days in a sort of more stable market, subdued by various bits and bobs. Not forgetting Brexit at the moment, which is a big topic. I'm sure we'll chat about in a minute. But I think the key is to add value in any investment.
Yeah.
So throughout my career, from those early days, I've always tried to add value. So I've, as a core investor, I'm a developer as well, really. So I think by developing the properties and putting more energy into them, more effort, more change of use, whether that's a planning change of use or a physical change of use in terms of the layout, or adding value by creating more income from the property. There are ways to make money quite easily in property still, even in any market. So, and I think the book, aims to cover those points off and help you with the educational side, to know what to focus on.
Where did you start investing? Where was that first property?
So I took my first job in Reading, in Berkshire. So the first property was there. First 2 or 3 properties were there. I still hold a lot of stock in Reading. That's our main office there at the moment in the Thames Valley.
Yeah.
So, the southeast of England's a great place to invest. We like to invest in the sort of fringe towns. So, London's great, but it's really a capital growth driven market, and therefore sort of market fluctuations tend to be a bit more severe. It tends to be the first to go up and the first to go down in any major market cycle. Yields are lower as well, as you might expect, because of the demand and the high prices. So we like sort of fringe areas, and the Thames Valley around the fringe areas is where to buy, because you can buy that a little bit cheaper, make your money, add your value, and not be buying in the sort of peak areas where it's always a bit tight and a bit competitive. Go where the demand is, go where the tenant demand is, of course.
Where's your current focus? Where are you currently investing?
We've got stuff in Newbury at the moment, so we've got a couple of good developments there. We've just finished a 27 apartment studio scheme there, which was a permitted development scheme, office to residential model, which was brilliant. That's always permitted development at the moment, so you have to go through a different process than full planning, which is usually easier. Can be a little bit contentious on a few points sometimes, but it's generally less risk and cheaper way. You don't have to pay the sort of Section 106 payments and stuff. So it's a great way that the government's spurring developers to take old offices back and convert them into residential flats, and really nice way of recycling property ultimately. And it works for a lot of kind of offices that are sat there that have been disused over the current times when businesses haven't been doing so well, still a fallout of the 2008 recession. And a lot of new offices are being built. So the older ones that aren't potentially, grade A offices with all the facilities, those are a bit redundant or expensive to put back into a grade A office situation. So, turning those back into sort of residential units is a really good model at the moment. It won't last forever because obviously all the offices will get sold and snapped up. So it's a short to medium term strategy.
So the book International Real Estate for Dummies, when is it out?
Yep. It's out now, actually. Just recently launched in July, I believe it came out. So literally newly launched. Exciting times. I guess it's a culmination of all of the knowledge that's been in my head over the years, and it felt really good to get it out on paper.
Yeah.
I think I think us humans, the brain is a powerful tool, and when you write a book, and this was my first book, I've written sort of ebooks and various bits and bobs, but shorter form content. But writing something so big, and it is 380 odd pages, I think. You sort of go, wow, I knew all that stuff. It's quite refreshing to get it down on paper and see it in front of you as a book. It's quite
amazing what's
pleasing.
Actually stored up there.
What's stored up there, yeah. And I'm pleased to share it.
And you say there's a lot there. There's 380 pages, and for anyone who's familiar with the Dummies books, they are actually quite detailed.
They're very detailed.
I think the first one I got was Poker for Dummies. Still haven't a clue. But anyway, I am sure anybody reading this will have plenty of ideas of where to go. But why did you actually write it? What spurred you? What inspired you to write particularly International Real Estate for Dummies?
Yeah, I mean, just touching on the Dummies brand actually for a moment. And you're right, it's a very detailed book. I think the brand, if you're not familiar with it as a how-to guide, as an educational series of books and branded series, it goes into an awful lot of detail. For Dummies is really an unfair
misnomer, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a complete misnomer, and it's it's a fun brand, and it's meant to be sort of tongue in cheek, I think, in some ways.
I think it's quite a good marketing tool.
Yeah, I guess
it disarms people. They go, oh yeah, I'm not very bright. Or they go, yeah, let's have a look. That seems accessible. I think that's the subconscious message, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And it covers a real breadth of subjects. So it's everything from rent to rent, lease options, HMOs, conversions, financing, JVs. It covers a lot of information on a lot of topics. Whereas, a lot of other books maybe, singular in one topic, and they go into potentially even more detail. But with this, you get a lot of detail on a lot of subjects. So it's great for people getting into property and people that maybe have a small portfolio already that want to learn new strategies. Serviced accommodation is big at the moment. There's a whole chapter on that and a lot of detail there. So it's a great way to pick up and create the breadth to your portfolio and perhaps try different things. Why did I write it? I wanted to help people. I wanted to educate people. I think there's a lot of people out there professing to be experts in the property world, and great that they're also trying to help people. But I think it's really important to come from a background of having done it first. I've spent 20 years in property now, plus, and made a lot of mistakes, and I want to share those. I want to try and help people not make those mistakes. Through our main chat forum at propertyforum.com, we've got the largest international property chat forum in the world. There we kind of help people with educational materials. People can chat about their issues and learn stuff about property and learn how to avoid the pitfalls that a lot of people have made before. So it's really just taking that kind of core ethos of helping people, giving something back, trying to help people that don't want to screw up in the ways that I have over the years and lost money at certain times. But I think the key is to get back up, learn from those mistakes, and crack on. So that was the kind of key ethos behind it all.
And how did you structure it? Because this is a world, the Dummies brand. It's a worldwide brand. How have you sectioned it off so that that it applies to the US investor investing here, or the UK investor investing in Portugal, or how have you sort of made it as broad-reaching as possible?
That's a good question, and ultimately that was a key factor of the book, is that I wanted to introduce people to strategies that can be used in any market within reason. So the theories of buy where there's infrastructure investment, buy where there's good tenant demand, look at the demographics, both macro and microeconomics, and drill down into certain areas, applies in any country in the world. You just need to pick your country, pick your area, pick your passion. I always start by saying go and invest where you are interested in, where you love. Is it your hometown? Is it where you went to university? Is it abroad? You go to Spain every year for holidays and you absolutely love it there and you want to retire there. So actually building a small portfolio that you can build on in your retirement when you move there is your way of doing it. And so driving any business with passion is really important. I guess it was key to make sure that it was that every bit of information in that book is transposable to any region, and so the strategies. House in multiple occupation, for example, is big business, big news, big strategy in the UK at the moment. And actually, it's probably not just the UK. Maybe they call it something different in other countries. But we describe that in a generic way as well, to describe its multi-let, tenants sharing properties, communal areas, etc. And no doubt that happens all over the world. It spurs from the sort of student market often. Any of those strategies are easily transferable to most markets, and I think that's the key. Is anyone in any country can pick up this book and hopefully learn a new strategy that perhaps wasn't at the forefront of that market in that country.
So thinking about those transferable strategies, what sort of practical things do you need to take into account when you're going to a country that you don't know? I mean, what would be the first, say, 3, 4, 5 steps that you would take?
Well, I think with any investment, it's due diligence, and due diligence ultimately is doing your research, doing your homework, learning about the financial implications of a certain area. So it's a lot of Googling, to be honest, to start with. I mean, that's the oracle now, isn't it, at the moment for research? There's so much free information out on the internet. It's going on forums such as our forum. People have done it before. You become a sponge to information. So research is the best. Education is key. So, buy certain books that might be appropriate for learning about property, go on certain courses, shameless plug. But no, education is key. Education, research, due diligence. Don't go and waste your life savings before you've done 10 times the amount of research you think you might need to do, and learning about how to invest in that type of property strategy, that type of property, that kind of market, that country. You need to know all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to put people off. There's so much to know. But practically, it's just all about getting to know what you're about to do properly. Don't dive in with your heart, think, I want to buy my Spanish villa because it's going to be great, and find out that the rental market is actually not as good as you thought, because there's 3,000 other villas in that town, and actually your occupancy levels are 20, 30% of what you thought they might be. Because you were dreaming and you weren't actually doing research and going on Airbnb and booking other people's villas for a couple of weeks, going to see what they look like, checking out the competition.
And then the local knowledge, that's got to be the next step, hasn't it?
Local knowledge. Once you've done all of that and you're going, right, I'm comfortable with the market I keep using Spain, but it's an easy go-to in this one. I've done my research on the town, I've done my research on the country, I know the general market there. Property market's quite low at the moment, still from 2008 recession. Recoveries happen, but it's still a long way to go out there. So it's an exciting market potentially for the future. It's getting to know the local agents, people on the ground. So you need to be going there. You can't do it all online. You've got to have good, trusted people on the ground. So then it's about building your dream team or your power team, and getting the right key experts there to help you fill in the gaps of your knowledge. You don't have to know it all. I think over the years, certain highly successful people have professed, that you don't need to know a lot of things. You just need to be very good at one thing. I think there's a common misperception in the world that you have to be good at everything to be an entrepreneur, but that's not the case at all. You just need to know who to employ or team up with.
You've touched on it. You call it the dream team in your book. Legacy call it the power team, and it's having the correct people who have that knowledge that you can employ to make sure that they carry out the tasks.
Because I'm not a tax expert. I don't know about you, Simon, but I don't know how to. and I'm not a property management expert, actually.
No.
I've got an excellent team that help me do that are far better at it than me. They're far more detailed. The administration is flawless. The details of your team, you can't possibly do it all. So obviously in the early days, you have to start out. And when I started out, my first few properties I managed, I did absolutely everything. So I think starting out, that's not a bad thing. If you've got a day job, maybe not so practical. So maybe you need to default to your dream team sooner rather than later and accept that cost. There's a cost associated with a team, especially when you're talking about managing agents and sales agents. You have to pay to do certain things. But yeah, I think it's key to kind of choose the right time to do that. But learning for yourself in the first instance, you can't beat doing it, learning the rubbish bits.
I think many investors will have gone through that. Those first one or two where they've been heavily involved and cut costs. Right, we'll strip the wallpaper ourselves. We'll
exactly
pull out the old kitchen. We'll
late night calls of
that
leaks.
First tenant. Yeah, exactly. The toilet's broken again. To go right now.
Yeah.
So this isn't your first book, of course. You've got another book all about Brexit.
I
Tell
do
us
indeed.
a bit about that.
I do indeed. Well, technically, this is my first major globally published book. Brexit came very soon after it. It was kind of a deal with Wiley. We did an exciting job with this book, and they wanted to do a Brexit book, which was quite scary. They approached me for that
Focused
book.
on investing or the impact?
Just focused on everything to do with Brexit.
Yeah.
It's a huge topic. That we want Brexit for Dummies. They sort of, here's a title, go and write it.
Should we give it to Boris Johnson?
Should we give it to Boris Johnson? I'm
a little bit political.
Dying to hand it to him in person. Some useful tips in there, Boris.
That would be quite some marketing tool for you, wouldn't it? That would be a nice photo op.
Give me a call, Boris. So yeah, I guess Brexit for Dummies, there it is. Who would have thought?
I mean, the big question I've got is, though, how can you write a book about Brexit and it hasn't actually happened yet? Yeah, absolutely. We're in the midst of all of the shenanigans of the negotiation or lack of. How do you write about a book?
Turmoil.
A book about an event yet to happen? I mean, is it full of predictions or speculations?
Not at all. No, it's really based on everything from the history, the lead up. The rocky road of the relationship between the UK and Europe, everything back from when the EEC was formed right through to current times. It's really to inform people what things could be affected and how to protect your business. For example, there's an impact assessment for your business in there. There's a chapter about that. There's bits that cover off import and export businesses. There's a lot of really good business information. So it's a business book. You could take away Brexit and put any major market issue for Dummies and how to protect your business for it. So, the idea is to give the book, longevity. It's to give it historical relevance. So, universities in the future will be picking this up in their economics and their history classes, hopefully, and using it as a milestone to go, well, you guys remember Brexit. We will talk about the 2008 recession still in this, 2 or 3 generations. I think Brexit will be even far further reaching than that. It's a huge worldwide event. So to write probably the biggest and to partner with one of the biggest brands in the world to deliver that book was really exciting for me, and I'm really grateful to have been offered that opportunity. So where did I start? A lot of head scratching, but as with any book, you kind of map out your table of contents. You start to think about what could go in it and break it down. And it's a really good book for me because I was a layperson, like anyone, and I knew as much about Brexit and the history as anyone else, which wasn't a huge amount. So I had to do a lot of homework, a lot of research. There's a lot of research has gone into that book to pull together, as much as I could find about sort of history and the lead up and the relevant parties involved and all the relevant structures of the EU and the UK, etc., etc. So do we know the answer? No. Does the book make any political sways? No. It is a neutral book that just lays out what could happen, the scenarios, things like falling back to world trade tariff rules. It's just laying out what could happen. What's a worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? Talks about the building the trade relations with and the trade agreements with Canada, which took I think 7 years from memory. It's in the book. A lot of facts like that in the book. So it's really interesting to go through and see things like the referendum results broken down by all the regions. Some really interesting stuff to see how it actually went. And what's happened so far. We will, of course, do an author review in 6 months, a year when we know the final result. But I think that really only affects maybe 5% of the book. It might, affect a few comments in certain sections, just to put finality to it as a piece of coursework, as a piece of historical information. But there's a lot of business stuff in there.
So where are we? It's 13th of August today as we're recording this. So that's 70 something days till the day where apparently
the big B word.
The big B word actually happens, and the other big B word is convinced it's going to happen.
Double B's, yeah.
Any predictions? Are you going to put your neck on the line? Will it happen? Will it be delayed?
I think
you're welcome to say pass.
I'm going to say pass to some. I'm going to do a tactical political avoidance, but I'm going to say, as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, as a property investor, I think Brexit needs to happen now because we're so far down the line. Reversing out of that's going to be tricky. That's my general opinion, and that's not a political sway. That's just, I think it would be better be done with it. Get on, negotiate the various trade agreements, sort ourselves out, crack on and forget about it, and not forget about it, learn from it.
Yeah, and there's been so much uncertainty within the property market in general, whether you're residential or investor buyer within the UK market. We've seen a steady slowdown in purchases and mortgages being approved. It's just sort of almost stalled the market, and there was a bit of a surge about a month ago once the deadline was once
fully set and
all of that. So what impact do you think it's going to have first on the UK market once it happens, and then also on the international market for international investors? I mean, there's loads of different ways you could look at it. What's it going to have?
There is.
What impact will it have on UK investors in the UK market? What impact will it have on the international investor on the UK market? And maybe
we stick to one question at a time.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm getting carried away with myself. UK market, first of all. UK investors in the UK, what impact do you think it'll have for us?
I think the problem at the moment, and which is why, going back to my comment a moment ago, is that it just needs to happen, because actually uncertainty breeds inaction.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening now a little bit. As you say, it's general, prices haven't crashed. We're not seeing a crash here.
No, it's just sort of slowing down for about the last 2 or 3 years.
Kind of like rabbit in the headlights, like, Brexit's coming towards. We're like not sure, so we're just going to stay here and do nothing. And I think that's holding back foreign investment into the UK, which is then stopping UK investors investing in the UK. So I think once it's done and dealt with, whatever happens, obviously a hard Brexit will have a short-term impact as people work out that that's possibly not as bad as we all think it might be, or we're being scaremongering into believing by the mainstream press. The press have this tendency to talk people into recessions. There's obviously that underlying reason, but we try and blow it out of all proportion, don't we? I'm an eternal optimist. And although Boris got a lot of slack for saying stay positive, I think probably what he meant by that was stay positive and then continue to do action to make things as best they possibly can in every single sector. So that was one of his comments. I thought that was, that was actually a good comment, despite the horrible press he got for it.
Yeah, I mean, staying positive is actually a good idea, because it helps you adapt and change to whatever the situation is. And over the last 10 or 15 years in property, there's been so many different changes, different legislative changes, tax changes in lending. I mean, the credit crunch, everyone just went, what we're going to do?
We've had a tough time.
But a very wise investor I know, he said, we'll just adapt, we'll change.
Yeah.
We've had to change in the last 10 years, and this was back in something like 2008. He said, we'll just change, and we'll just change what we do. So do you think that's what is going to happen, is there'll be, right, okay, this is it, let's get on with it, let's try and find a new way of making the best of the scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think staying positive leads into sort of the law of attraction we all work with as successful entrepreneurs, and that helps you move forward, overcome issues. So I think we'll see this issue of Brexit be overcome, and I think activity will gradually be restored. Hard Brexit might take a little bit longer. Reasonable soft Brexit, I think we'll be jumping back into action before no time. I think we'll start investing. I don't think we're going to see a sort of a huge spike. I think we will see a little bit of a mini blip, a bit of a really strong growth for 6 or 12 months. But I think we'll ease back into just a sort of a general sustainable market growth. The government, as you say, are doing all they can to subdue growth to sensible levels. And we can't argue that isn't a bad thing. We don't want to see huge sways in the market, cyclical, booms and busts. So actually, we might not like it, but, arguing that these changes will subdue the market to a point, probably not a bad thing. There's huge amount of pent-up demand for property. Population's growing. We're still not building enough houses. Brexit's hurting house builders and slowing things down as well. So, the demand is there, and I think coupled with government legislation, it'll just grow at a good steady rate. Chuck that foreign investment back in that's been pent up, waiting for the bottom, waiting for the low pound. And we'll see a good market in a year or two's time.
So the international investors are going to come back. No, it's from my point of view, it's the international investors have stayed away from the high ticket property. That's been left alone. And is there going to be this suddenly arriving at Heathrow, a whole load of new investors going, okay, the pound's at its lowest, they're going to start recovering.
Bags of cash coming off their private jets. I think a lot of foreign investment is driven by the major markets. So it's London, it's Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, big towns. In the southeast, Reading as well is a big town, doing well. So will they flood back in droves? I think certainly a few will. And that's where I think there'll be that mini sort of blip. I think people will come back in. I think it's the bigger investors that are doing that for key capital growth style properties. So London is obviously going to be a driver for that. In any market, London is, in the UK, by far the biggest market, and it's almost its own micro market, as we all know. So that will lead the boom potentially with that foreign money in particular. And London's driven by a lot of foreign investment anyway. So that's probably why that's taking a bit of a hit, and then the country takes a bit of a hit after that. There's always a ripple effect. It's like the laws of energy. There's a knock-on effect in everything in the market. Yeah. So that's why it's so hard to predict.
What happens in London, it
kind of spreads out, and you're not sure quite how it'll ripple out or when or the longitude of that. So it's it'll be interesting to see. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do believe we need to get Brexit done and dusted. And I think our best chance of doing that at the moment is trying to hit October or near enough with whatever happens. I hope for everyone's sake it's not a hard Brexit, because we just want to return to normality as soon as possible.
Yeah, I remember last year there was... 2 years ago, there was a lady. She went, "We're having another vote. Oh, there's too much politics these days." And we are sick to death of Brexit. There's too much Brexit.
Why don't we just put all our energy into building a better economy, supporting house builders and PRS schemes and things that deliver good quality rental accommodation that's needed? So many political angles we could be actually concentrating on the NHS and all of this really important stuff that we're just worried about Brexit. Get it done, please.
So coming back then to international investing, have you got any top investment tips for investing overseas? Where would you see is a hot market at the moment? Is there anywhere you'd avoid?
I'm sure there's plenty of places to avoid. Be here all day finding those. But I think, going back
What's
a little
exciting
bit to
you at the moment?
I think the key to not intentionally politically sideswipe a direct answer to a hotspot when everyone rushes out to buy there. We better go and buy straight after this podcast, Simon, before everyone else floods back in there.
By the way, whatever he says now is opinion, not advice.
You could lose your home. Do not take out a mortgage. Blah, blah.
All of that.
Small print. I think the critical thing is choosing your strategy first, actually. So I'm going to re-answer that question a bit. Is what do you want to do? Do you want to run HMOs? Do you want to run holiday lets? Do you want to be on Airbnb? Do you want to do serviced accommodation? Do you want to do all sorts of other interesting stuff, conversions, developments, whatnot? So
it's coming back to getting the right knowledge and understanding your market and what your strategy is.
And where I would suggest might not be where someone else would like to go. It's going back to your passion. I would probably personally default to either an up-and-coming, really kind of high-risk investment. I've got an apartment in Egypt I bought a few years ago, for example, that's just sat there and will sell one day when I choose to sell it as a little sort of bit of a punt, to be honest.
When I read that, I thought, whoa, Egypt.
I mean,
one of them
10 years ago it was really, really buoyant until they had a few bombs go off and then scared the heck out of everyone, and people are gradually trickling back now. So that's an example of a very high risk investment. But there are other interesting areas you can invest in: Bulgaria and Croatia and the Czech Republic. Sort of, up and coming emerging markets are really interesting to me. But that is high risk strategy. To someone else, it might just be going to the south of France because they love it and they go there the whole time and they can manage it easily because they've got a network out there already, or they can speak the language, for example. So there's no one size fits all, unfortunately. And the idea of the book is to give you the tools you need to make your own personal decision about where to invest in. And what you're going to do and how you're going to invest in it, and how you might finance it, and how you might do a JV with it. You might want a JV with a local builder in France who knows the market and has got his whole power team there, and you basically become the developer, the marketing person that sources the properties, hands them over to him to run and manage, and there's all sorts of creative ways of doing deals. And it will really depend on the areas that you love, provided that tallies up with a reasonable investment approach. You don't have to go for the highest yielding property in the whole of the world that year. It might be India. If you live in the UK, that's not hugely practical. If you're an Indian family living in England, you've got connections back in India, absolutely perfect. You're probably set, aren't you? You've got some brilliant connections to leverage. So it's a very personal decision, a bit of advice there. So sorry, it's a bit general, but I think it's important to try and give the tools first.
Yeah, I think there's a key message there. It's about getting the knowledge. So thinking about education and investing, what would you say are the key differences between being an educated professional investor and an armchair investor?
I think the latter is, akin to stocks and shares. It's akin to pensions, ISAs, and that kind of form of investment. I think you can do both. Very much so. We work with private investors as part of our development portfolio. We give them a great return. We offer a loan note product where essentially they're sort of loaning the money. We secure it on UK property that's being built and developed. They've got great security there as UK property. So the underlying asset is still security. It's still UK property in our example. And they get a great return on investment for their money. So it's very low risk and it is hands off. So I guess it's personal goals as well. So going back to the education, something that overrides all of the education and knowledge and all that kind of stuff is goals, attitude.
Yeah.
What do you want to do with your life, with your business? If you're an armchair investor, you've probably got a day job, or maybe you're retiring, maybe you've got a big pot of cash and you don't want to do the hard work, the day to day. I'm going to go and rip out this office and turn it into a block of flats. That's a lot of work.
True. So, do you think they tend to be a bit safer, the armchair investors? Are they more conventional sort of thought process in their investment strategy?
I think some can be, but I also think you need to do a lot of due diligence on your armchair investment because you are trusting someone else with your money. So our investors, for example, trust us to make their money safe, secure, and a great return. That's a big ask on someone. So, but then they're happy for you to go and make your margin, your money by doing all that hard work. And it's almost like a JV scenario, hands-off investment. Us on the development side, we're doing all the legwork and all that extra stuff that the armchair investor doesn't want to do, but it's a win-win. All JVs, every business deal, every business opportunity, in my opinion, needs to be win-win, where both parties go away feeling blooming good deal here. Excuse my language. Getting a blooming good deal here. And how are they? Yeah, bleep that out. Beep. How on earth are they paying me 10% returns or whatever to lend me their money? How are they making any money? Rest assured, we're making money, and we're probably making a lot of money. Not on every deal, but overall, we make good money. Investors are super happy because they're making a great return, far better than ISAs and stocks and shares and stuff like that. So. And it's risk versus reward, isn't it, as well? You can go and do it all yourself, which some people will perceive as a high risk. Others might perceive as a low risk. So understanding your own risk profile before making any investment decision is a key. Do you want to be fully in control, doing it yourself, have the knowledge, do all that background, all that background knowledge, all that background work, and crack on and do it yourself? Is that high risk because you maybe haven't done it for 20 years, so you're a bit new to it? Or it's the other way around, that's low risk because you've got control and you can change stuff.
When you bought that first house in uni, did it feel risky then?
Not at all.
No?
No, I just had a gut feeling that property was an incredible asset class. It's tangible, you can touch it, it's there, you can manage it, you can control it, you can change the strategy that manages it to numerous different things, all of which are covered in the book: serviced accommodation, HMOs, rent to rent, blah blah. Everything is in there to control property in a different way, and strategies to maximize its income and growth in any market. And it might be that you have to change strategies on certain properties in certain locations. My single let property in the centre of Birmingham isn't working for me at the moment, but hey, you know what, I can get 8 beds out of it as an HMO. I'll put in planning to get the use for an 8-bed HMO. Great, they've given it to me, bang, I'm making double the income. So I think it's really key to be able to switch and change. Change is the only constant. I use that phrase a lot.
You may have answered my next question. I was going to say there's lots of knowledge in here, But over the years, is the one big lesson, or what's the greatest lesson you've learned over the years as an investor?
Oh, crikey. But there's so many.
Yes.
There's so many.
Well, you've got 380 pages worth of lessons there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Single biggest lesson was learning how to finance properties and deals with other people's money. So partnering up with people.
Yeah.
I went from 2 or 3 properties to over 200 units, I think, currently let out. And that's growing all the time as we buy and do more stuff. But I couldn't have gone past 2 or 3 deals. So I ran out of my own money. I ran out of loans I could take and personal loans. And sure, that first property where I took out 2 personal loans right out of uni, I was up to my eyeballs in student debt of 10 grand of student debt, so 3 grand a year of student loans. Came straight out, 10 grand graduate loan, 15 grand personal loan to get that 25 grand deposit for that first house. Some people thought I was absolutely mad within 2 years because of the market, and I was very fortunate, so that's why I'm now trying to help people that that's not the way to go now. You need to rely on more education. I jumped in because it was my home as well, and I just knew I could service the debt, and I knew I needed a home, and I knew property was good, so that was my first reason for it. But that first property taught me a lot. And within 2-3 years, I think it was, I remortgaged that property for a little bit more, paid off all that debt, bought myself a nice little sports car. And at 24, I think it was, 24, 25, having rented out my spare room and then the second spare room in that property, I had no bills and mortgage because my 2 tenants were paying it, which then turned to 3 when I converted the garage into a nice ensuite double room. And 2 of those tenants are my best friends today. So, this isn't a kind of like, horror story that you read in the press of slum landlords and cramming people into properties. If it's done professionally and ethically and sensibly, you're providing good quality accommodation to much needed market where the first time buyer age is up to, I think, 38 now in the UK. People in their 20s and early 30s and contractors even into their 40s that might be in that town for 6 or 12 months need good quality, fairly priced accommodation. And a good professionally run house share or a studio apartment ticks those boxes perfectly in the current market and for the foreseeable future. So biggest tip. Sorry, I've diversified a bit there, Simon. Waffled on. Is learning to work with investors and other people's money, whether that's banks, mortgages, bridge loans, JVs, investor equity funds, etc.
Well, these are all the things that I think are the most surprising for brand new students who come through the legacy program. They all go, "Wow, I didn't realise there was so many different ways." Purely because we're taught, you go to the bank, ask for a mortgage that's 3 or 4 times your salary, your annual salary, and they say no, and then you go, "Oh, well, I can't buy then." So,
or I still need the 20% deposit or 10% deposit. If you're lucky as a first-time buyer, you might get your help to buy. I think it's 5% at the moment. It changes regularly. But then you're still taking a loan for the rest of the deposit off the government and then a mortgage. So you've actually got a lot of debt there that, as your home, how are you going to pay that off? You've got to pay that off with your primary job. So that doesn't work for investors, of course. That's only a primary home.
Different model.
You still need a chunky 20-odd%, 30% maybe deposit, which is a lot of money.
Well, you said chunky. Here's a chunky question for you. Last one before we wrap up. This might be really hard, but it's 2019 now. We're moving into the 20s.
God, that's quite scary, isn't it?
Well, I was going to say, what are your top tips for investors in 2020? But what have you got any ideas where things might go? We've talked about building and developing properties. There's a lot of noise about build to rent, that sort of thing. What's any trends that interesting trends you think will develop and grow more over the next sort of 5 years? Yeah, we're in a really interesting time actually. So I think there's an unasked question there, which I'll answer alongside that one, and that is, be careful with certain strategies when you employ them. It's an ever-changing market. So, for example, serviced accommodation is a huge up-and-coming strategy at the moment. It's covered in depth in the book, but also the regulation is changing. So, be prepared is the unanswered question. Be prepared, whatever you invest in, wherever you invest, for change. Change is is there all the time. It's the only constant. So regulation will increase. It will change. Be ready for that. Be ready for growth and push past your portfolio to a level that can ride the little bumps. A little bit of 2 or 3% on the stamp duty, Section 24 interest rate. Mortgage interest
relief change. Could be a major problem with one or two personally owned properties.
We could have a whole other hour's worth of conversation on that.
It's so in depth, we could go on for hours. But prepare your investment strategy for scale, and that's get the right advisors, get the right dream team, the right power team in there to set you up correctly from a tax and building perspective, and push past that first couple of deals. Learn how to push past it with creative investing strategies and financing, etc. Don't be afraid to do that. When you get to a certain level, it gets easier because you can ride those couple of percent here and there. If you're getting squeezed out by 2 or 3% or 5%, you probably shouldn't be doing it, or you need to think about your strategy and getting something that's working a bit better. Where to invest, UK specific, everywhere, anywhere. Just do your due diligence. Anywhere that works for your strategy, your tenant base. Do your, drill down your economics on that area. I like fringe areas. I don't like sort of central where it's super toppy, super expensive, super competitive. I like to almost be in first. So I pick the town next to the biggest town. So don't follow the market. Think about creating your own market to some degree, but don't go too far on a limb, because actually it might take 10 years for the market to catch up. So go just where the market's going to be, or already is, but just the competition's not, because they're all focusing on, centre of London. Actually, just around the edge of the M25 could be the perfect place to be investing, or a bit further out. So just go one step out of the hottest area, because actually that's going to be the hottest area in a few years' time, without a doubt.
So International Real Estate for Dummies, your fabulous book. Where can legacy viewers, or indeed anybody who's watching this, find out more about this?
Please, look at links in the posts we're putting up today. Amazon, anywhere books are sold, basically. You can go into your local Waterstones, order it there if it's not on the shelves. Absolutely anywhere, any book storage facility, online, offline, they are selling it right now.
And you've been filming a few of the chapters as well.
We have, we're preparing a video course series for the book with Legacy, so that's hugely exciting. I don't think we've got a launch date planned just yet, but it's in the very near future. So watch out for that.
Great. Nicholas, thank you so much. It's been very interesting.
Been a pleasure.
I will be getting that Brexit book, because I'd love to read more about your insights into that and get a better understanding, because at times I'm just going, Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And if you haven't liked, subscribed, and hit the little bell icon for updates on more Property Box content as it comes out, please do that. For now, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.